First up on the show, well, in his first appearance before a major international forum since the Wagner mutiny at home, the Russian President Vladimir Putin came down heavily on Western sanctions on Moscow. While addressing a virtual summit at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, he said Russia would continue to resist sanctions from the West and that they only made Russia stronger. The meet was hosted by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually. Speaking weeks after the rebellion at home, President Putin underlined the unity and consolidation among the Russian people.
The Russian people are consolidated as never before. The solidarity and high responsibility for the fate of the fatherland was vividly demonstrated by Russian political circles and the entire society by coming out as a united front against the attempted armed rebellion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues from countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization which expressed support for the actions of the Russian leadership to protect the constitutional order, life and security of residents.
And Putin's speech emphasized on Russia's unity at a meeting with key allies appeared to show how keen he is to remove any doubts about his own authority on the world stage. Putin also used the platform to send a message of defiance to the West. The Russian president also backed trade accords between SCO nations in local currencies, seen as an attempt to blunt Western sanctions. Meanwhile, the Chinese President Xi Jinping also attended the meet, while the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on SCO members to boost trade connectivity and technology cooperation among its member nations. He also talked about the need to counter terrorism among SCO member regions with the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif listening in.
Excellencies, आतंकवाद क्षेत्रीय एवं वैश्विक शांति के लिए प्रमुख खतरा बना हुआ है। हम चुनौती से निपटने के लिए निर्णायक कार्रवाई आवश्यक है। आतंकवाद चाहे किसी भी रूप में हो, किसी भी अभिव्यक्ति में हो, हमें इसके विरुद्ध मिलकर लड़ाई करनी होगी।
Modi also urged all SCO countries to come together and assist Afghanistan with humanitarian aid. This year's SCO Summit also saw Iran formally joining the group as a member state, and the Belarusian president also attended this meeting. And for the very latest on the SCO virtual meeting, Siddhant Sibal is now joining us live. And Siddhant, well, some strong comments there from the Russian President Vladimir Putin, particularly over the West and its sanctions. And the Indian Prime Minister there hinting on cooperation in trade, technology, regional security, and of course also talking about how SCO member nations must come together to fight terror.
Well, the SCO grouping had an important day today with the expansion, especially with Iran becoming a full member. But remember, SCO grouping has China and Russia as the key countries and countries who essentially were the founding member of this grouping as well. And it was natural for leaders of China and Russia to lash out against the West. But for India, as a chair of the grouping, it was a day where India can shape the narrative and the direction in which the grouping is going. We know that the Indian Prime Minister focused on several areas, whether it's connectivity, whether it's counterterrorism, shared Buddhist heritage is something that India is keen on, that links India with rest of the SCO countries, especially the Central Asian countries. And India essentially sent out a message to both Islamabad and Beijing as well. The Indian Prime Minister mentioning about the issue of cross-border terrorism and how there are countries who are safe haven for terrorists, but also said that when it comes to terrorism, there should not be any double standards. Now, this is a message clearly to Beijing, which has been blocking listing of Pakistani terrorists at the United Nations Security Council. We know just a few weeks ago, Sajid Mir, the mastermind of 2611, was prevented from being listed as an international terrorist after China blocked it. But nonetheless, it was a packed year for India. As the chair of the grouping, it is for the first time that India is chairing the grouping since becoming a full-fledged member in 2017. And of course, India wanted to give its own touch to the grouping, coming out with new initiatives and mechanisms from areas related to traditional medicine to startup to innovation.
Right, Siddhant, thanks very much indeed for joining us with the very latest on that SCO virtual meeting in which we saw the coming together of the Russian, Chinese, Indian and Pakistani leaders in the same